What most people never learn is that change does not fail at the moment it begins. It fails at the moment it becomes inconsistent. People often manage to shift their state briefly. They feel clearer, calmer, more aligned, and then slowly, almost imperceptibly, they return to the old baseline. Not because the change wasn't real, but because it was not maintained. This final episode is about the part no one explains. How states are stabilized. How signals are maintained. How coherence becomes a way of living rather than a temporary experience. Because shifting a state is only half the work. The real question is what happens after the shift. Let's begin with something simple and precise. A state is not maintained by effort. It is maintained by consistency of signal. And a signal is not what you say you want. It is what your system repeatedly broadcasts. Your nervous system, your emotional tone, your attention, your behavior, and your identity assumptions are constantly emitting information. Not metaphorically, biologically, socially, systemically. This is why people often feel that life responds to them before they act. Because it does. Systems synchronize to signals, not intentions. This is the principle that sits beneath everything we've explored in this playlist. Time does not change systems. Circumstances do not override state. Safety allows reorganization. And coherence determines what stabilizes. Now let's define coherence clearly. Coherence means that the internal parts of a system are not pulling in different directions. Thoughts align with emotions. Emotions align with behavior. Behavior aligns with identity. When these elements are aligned, the system emits a clear signal. When they are misaligned, the signal is noisy. Noise creates instability. Coherence creates persistence. This is why some people feel grounded even when life is uncertain, and others feel unstable even when everything looks fine. It is not about what is happening. It is about whether the internal system is coherent. Now let's talk about why coherence is so rare. Because modern life trains fragmentation. We think one thing, feel another, do a third, and tell ourselves a fourth story about who we are. The nervous system experiences this as inconsistency. And inconsistency requires constant regulation. That regulation costs energy. This is why incoherent systems feel tired. Not because they are doing too much, but because they are constantly compensating for internal mismatch. Now notice something important. When people talk about manifestation or attraction, they often focus on desire. But systems don't respond to desire. They respond to stable patterns. A coherent signal repeated over time reshapes probability. Not instantly, not magically, gradually, predictably. This is why desperation repels rather than attracts. Desperation is incoherent. It says, I want this, while the system broadcasts, I am unsafe without it. The signal contradicts itself. So the system stabilizes the familiar state instead. This is not punishment. It is alignment logic. Now consider the opposite. A coherent state does not chase outcomes. It selects environments. When a system is coherent, it naturally moves toward conditions that match it. This is why after deep shifts, people say things like, I didn't try to change my life, but everything changed. Certain people just disappeared. Opportunities showed up without effort. This is not coincidence. It is synchronization. Now let's bring this into the body. Your body is not just a container for your mind. It is the primary stabilizer of state. Posture, breathing, muscle tone, rhythm. These are not secondary details. They are how the nervous system knows what state it is in. This is why thinking alone does not maintain change. If the body remains in a defensive configuration, the old state will return. Not because the mind failed, because the body remembered. This is why coherence must be embodied, not forced. Embodied coherence feels like ease, not comfort. Ease. There is a difference. Ease is efficiency. Comfort is avoidance. A coherent system can handle challenge without fragmentation. An incoherent system collapses under small stressors. Now let's address something subtle. People often think maintaining a new state requires vigilance, that they must stay aligned. But vigilance is a threat response. It creates tension, and tension destabilizes coherence. Maintaining a state does not require monitoring. It requires orientation. Orientation means you repeatedly return to the same internal reference point, not by force, by familiarity. Just as a compass returns to north without effort, a coherent system returns to its baseline naturally. This is why repetition matters. Not repetition of action, repetition of state experience. Each time you experience yourself responding differently without punishment, the nervous system updates. Each time you allow calm without guilt, coherence strengthens. Each time you choose clarity over urgency, the signal stabilizes. This is not dramatic work, but it is cumulative. Now let's talk about collapse. Because collapse will happen. States wobble. Signals fluctuate. Old patterns resurface under stress. This does not mean the shift failed. It means the system is testing stability. What matters is how you respond. If you attack yourself, coherence breaks. If you panic, coherence breaks. If you interpret wobble as regression, coherence breaks. But if you respond with neutrality, something different happens. The system learns that fluctuation is allowed, and allowance stabilizes faster than control ever could. This is one of the most counterintuitive truths in systems change. You maintain coherence by not overreacting to incoherence. Now pause here. Think about how you usually respond when you notice yourself slipping. Do you tighten? Judge? Correct aggressively? Those responses are understandable, but they recreate the very state you are trying to leave. A coherent system responds to wobble with curiosity, not punishment. This is how stability emerges. Now let's zoom out. Why does coherence matter beyond personal experience? Because coherence influences other systems. Humans are not isolated. We synchronize. Emotion spreads. Tone spreads. Regulation spreads. This is why one calm person can stabilize a room, and one anxious person can destabilize it. Not through intention, through signal. This is also why collective environments matter. A coherent individual in an incoherent environment will feel strain, not because they are weak, but because synchronization pressure exists. This is why maintaining coherence sometimes requires boundaries, not withdrawal. Boundaries. Boundaries preserve signal clarity. Now let's connect this to the idea of probability. When your signal stabilizes, you don't force outcomes. You move into probability spaces that match your state. Different people exist there. Different conversations happen there. Different choices feel natural there. This is why people say, I don't know how I ended up here, but it feels right. They didn't end up anywhere. They aligned. Now we need to slow down here, because this is where misunderstanding often appears. Coherence does not mean positivity. It does not mean suppressing emotion. It does not mean staying calm all the time. Coherence means integration. Sadness can be coherent. Anger can be coherent. Grief can be coherent. What breaks coherence is denial. What breaks coherence is fragmentation. What breaks coherence is pretending. This is why authenticity stabilizes faster than performance. Now notice how this completes the entire quantum reset arc. You don't reset by becoming someone else. You reset by removing internal contradiction. You don't reset by forcing change. You reset by stabilizing a new baseline. You don't reset by controlling outcomes. You reset by maintaining a coherent signal long enough for systems to respond. This is not mystical. It is how oscillating systems behave. We are almost at the end of this episode. But before we close, something important needs to be said. Maintaining coherence is not about perfection. It is about directional consistency. Are you generally oriented towards safety rather than pressure? toward clarity rather than urgency, toward integration rather than self-attack? If yes, coherence is already forming. Even if you wobble, even if you doubt, even if you feel uncertain, this is enough. Now take a moment and feel into this. Not conceptually, somatically. Does the idea of maintaining coherence feel lighter than trying to change your life? It should, because it removes force. And force is what exhausted you in the first place. In the following part, we will complete this episode by exploring how to live from coherence without constant self-monitoring, how to protect your signal in noisy environments, how coherence reshapes identity over time, and how to let life respond without chasing it. This will close the Quantum Reset playlist fully. If this episode is resonating, remember to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who is tired of trying to change themselves. All books referenced in this episode are linked below through Amazon. Using those links supports the channel at no extra cost and allows this work to continue. There is a moment that comes after understanding, after insight, after relief, after the nervous system softens enough to imagine something different. It is the moment when life resumes. Emails arrive. People speak. Time presses. Old triggers reappear. This is where coherence is either integrated or abandoned. Most people think coherence is something you hold on to, but coherence is not a grip. It is a directional tendency. It is how the system returns to itself after disturbance. Just as a healthy body returns to equilibrium without conscious effort, a coherent state reasserts itself when the conditions are stable enough. This is why maintenance does not look like control. It looks like recovery. Recovery is what allows coherence to persist. Now let's name something honestly. Life will not stay quiet. You will not remain regulated all the time. Stress will appear. Conflict will happen. Old patterns will get activated. This is not a failure of coherence. It is the environment testing stability. What matters is not whether disturbance occurs, but how quickly the system returns to baseline. This is the difference between fragile calm and resilient coherence. Fragile calm collapses under pressure. Resilient coherence bends and returns. This is why trying to stay calm fails. Calm is a state. Coherence is a capacity. Now consider how most people respond to disruption. They interpret it as regression. They think, I lost it. They think I'm back to square one. They think, nothing really changed. That interpretation alone destabilizes the system. It introduces threat. It turns fluctuation into danger. But a coherent system does not interpret fluctuation as failure. It interprets it as information. Information allows adaptation. Judgment creates rigidity. This is one of the deepest shifts in this entire series. You do not maintain coherence by preventing disturbance. You maintain coherence by normalizing recovery. This is how nervous systems learn. Now let's talk about identity again, but from a different angle. Identity does not change because you declare a new one. It changes because the system repeatedly experiences itself behaving differently without negative consequences. Each time you respond with clarity instead of urgency, identity loosens. Each time you choose regulation instead of reaction, identity updates. Each time you allow yourself to be grounded without punishment, identity reorganizes. This is how identity evolves, not through aspiration, through lived evidence. This is why small, repeated experiences matter more than big declarations. The nervous system trusts experience, not intention. Now let's address something subtle. People often ask, how do I protect my energy? But energy does not need protection. Signals need consistency. When your signal is coherent, you don't need to guard it aggressively. Aggression is itself incoherent. Instead, coherence is maintained by clarity. Clear boundaries, clear pacing, clear internal tone. Clarity reduces friction. Friction drains energy. This is why coherent people feel steady even in demanding environments. They are not absorbing everything. They are orienting consistently. Now consider how this applies to relationships. Relationships often destabilize coherence, not because people are difficult, but because the system abandons itself to maintain connection. Over-explaining, over-giving, over-adjusting. These are incoherent responses. They say, connection requires self-erasure. The nervous system feels this as threat, so it tightens. Coherence does not require withdrawal. It requires presence without self-betrayal. When presence is coherent, relationships either stabilize or fall away naturally, not through confrontation, through mismatch. This is why some relationships fade quietly when you change. The signal no longer matches. Now let's talk about work, ambition, and purpose. Many people lose coherence around goals. They become urgent. They tie worth to outcomes. They compress time. This reactivates threat. A coherent system still moves toward meaningful goals, but without collapse, without self-attack, without constant urgency. Coherence does not eliminate ambition. It restructures it. Ambition becomes directional rather than compulsive. Progress becomes sustainable rather than exhausting. Now pause and notice how this reframes success. Success is not intensity. It is stability over time. This is why people who appear calm often surpass those who burn intensely, not because they want it less, but because their system can sustain engagement. Now let's address probability again. When your signal stabilizes, you don't need to chase opportunities. You notice them, not because they suddenly appeared, but because your perceptual field widened. State shapes perception. Perception shapes choice. Choice shapes trajectory. This is how probability shifts. Not magically, systemically. Now we need to address a final misunderstanding. Coherence is not about being high frequency or positive. Those ideas create pressure. Pressure destabilizes coherence. Coherence is about truth without fragmentation. You can be sad and coherent. You can be uncertain and coherent. You can be grieving and coherent. What breaks coherence is denial. What breaks coherence is performance. What breaks coherence is pretending you are somewhere you are not. This is why authenticity is stabilizing. Authenticity reduces internal contradiction, and reduced contradiction stabilizes the signal. Now let's close the arc. You started this playlist believing that a new year might change something. Then you saw that time doesn't change systems. You saw that unfinished states repeat. You saw that identity pressure blocks change. You saw that circumstances don't override state. You saw that safety precedes reorganization. And now you see that coherence determines what stabilizes. This is the full map. There is nothing missing. There is nothing more to add. The work is not doing more. The work is maintaining less contradiction. Let life respond to a clear signal. Let the system reorganize at its own pace. Let recovery matter more than control. This is not passive. It is precise. Before we end, take a moment. Not to plan, not to fix, just to notice your internal tone right now. Is it softer than when you started? If yes, something shifted. That is how coherence begins. Not with fireworks, with relief. If this series supported you, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it helps this work reach people who are still exhausting themselves trying to change. All books referenced across the Quantum Reset playlist are linked below through Amazon. Using those links supports the channel at no extra cost and allows this research-based work to continue. Now let this settle. You don't need to become someone new. You don't need to force a future. You only need to maintain a coherent signal long enough for life to respond. And it will. Because systems always do.